So then verses 6 through 10, we get scapegoat. So let's talk about what is a scapegoat. So we have in verse 6, Aaron is to offer the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. Then he is to take 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He is to cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other for the scapegoat. Aaron shall bring the goat whose lot falls to the Lord and sacrifice it for a sin offering, but the goat chosen by lot as the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to be used for making atonement by sending it into the wilderness as a scapegoat. And then continuing on verse 21, he's to lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. He shall send the goat away into the wilderness in the care of someone appointed for the task. The goat will carry on itself all their sins to a remote place, and the man shall release it into the wilderness. So some translations, my NIV says scapegoat. If you have a King James, it also says scapegoat. New King James, NIV, NASB, Amplified, and King James all have scapegoat. But if you have a New Living Translation, an ESV, or an ASV, it says Azazel. Then if you have a New Living Translation, it says to the wilderness of Azazel. Young's literal translation says a goat of departure, and the Wycliffe Bible says the scapegoat for Azazel. Who's Azazel? What is Azazel? What is this? Why is there such a discrepancy in between the different translations? Well, let's talk about this for a second. So there are 3 main theories that are out there wrapped around this one Hebrew word, Azazel. One of the theories is that Azazel is a demon, a fallen angel that is a leader among demons responsible for mischief and mayhem. So it's an ancient Jewish tradition that Azazel is a demon, and it's actually in a latter Jewish text, the book of Enoch, which is not in our Bible. The book of Enoch, chapter 8, verses 1 and chapter 10, verses 4 through 8, mentions Azazel as a leader of fallen angels. So this is not found in our Bible. This is tradition and extra biblical source, but that's one theory is that this is the second goat goes to this demon in the wilderness. The other theory is it's an actual place, that Azazel is a place that you would take the scapegoat to. The CSB calls it an uninhabitable place. The New Living Translation calls it the wilderness of Azazel. And the Mishnah, which this is a translation of the Mishnah, which is an oral Torah. So the Torah is the Pentateuch, the books of Moses, the first 5 books. But there is the Mishnah, which is the oral tradition. So this is what the rabbis, the traditions that were passed down, and it's written in the 2nd century AD. So this is additional insight, rules upon rules upon rules of how to keep the law. And there's a whole book called Yoma, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Yoma, that is all about the Day of Atonement. And then specifically, chapter 6 is talking about the scapegoat. So I'm going to read some highlights from the Mishnah, Yoma chapter 6, verse 1. The 2 he-goats of the Day of Atonement should be alike in appearance, in size, in value, and have been bought at the same time. Skipping down just a little bit. And if that cast for the Lord died, so if the goat that was set aside for the Lord died, he should say, let this on which the lot for the Lord has fallen stand in its stead. So if you set aside the 2 goats and one of them dies, you replace it. And if that cast for Azazel died, he should say, let this on which the lot for Azazel has fallen stand in its stead. going down to 2. He then came to the scapegoat and laid his 2 hands upon it and made confession. We do see this in the Bible, but it has more details here. And thus used he to say, O God, thy people, the house of Israel, have committed iniquity, transgressed, and sinned before thee. O God, forgive, I pray, the iniquities and transgressions and sins which thy people, the house of Israel, have committed and transgressed and sinned before thee. As it is written in the law of thy servant Moses, for on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you from all your sins, shall ye be clean before the Lord. Continuing on, so you notice that Azazel was mentioned there. 3, they delivered it to him that should lead it away. So they take the goat, they put the sins on it, and they pray over it, putting the sins of Israel on it, and they give it to the person who takes it away. There were 10 booths from Jerusalem to the ravine. So this is an actual ravine, a location, which is 90 riz from Jerusalem, R-I-S. And I looked it up. It's between 17 to 18 kilometers or 10 to 11 miles. And at each distance, there were 10 booths that were set up. At every booth, they used to say to him, here is food, here is water. And they went with him from that booth to the next booth. There was an escort that took whoever it was that was taking the scapegoat out to Azazel, out to the ravine, to this location. The last booth, for none used to, but not from the last booth. So no one went with the person guiding the scapegoat from the last booth. For none used to go with him to the ravine, but they stood at a distance and beheld what he did. Then 6, what did he do? He divided the thread of crimson wool and tied one half to the rock and the other half between its horns, and he pushed it from behind, and it went rolling down the ravine, and before it had reached halfway down the hill, it was broken in pieces. He returned and sat down beneath the last booth until nightfall. I just found that interesting and wanted to share that with you, that this has both scapegoat as well as Azazel as an actual place. So this is theory number 2 of the 3 for this word Azazel and scapegoat, is that it's an actual place. And I hope that reading from the Mishnah added additional context of the practices that the Jews actually did do in the temple period. Now we'll talk about at the very end about the rabbinic teaching that exists now today, because the temple since 70 AD has not existed. So you have a demon named Azazel that the second goat would be go to. You have an actual place, the ravine, and then you have scapegoat. If you break down the Hebrew word, Hebrew is read from right to left, not left to right. And so the first segment is goat and ease, and the second segment is azel, which is to go away. So the Hebrew word literally means a goat to take away, right? So the goat that departs is a translation of that. So the third theory is that Azazel is just the Hebrew word for what we use as scapegoat. They're interchangeable, and it's a ritual term in which Azazel or scapegoat is the one carrying away evil. The Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, translates this word apopomapaias, meaning the one sent away, or scapegoat. Context. Whenever we study the Bible, context always informs meaning. If you don't understand a single word, read the sentence around it. Then read the paragraphs before and after it. Then read the chapters before and after it. Then read the books before and after it. And always take your interpretation in the context of what surrounds it. Now, does it make sense, as we're looking at the Day of Atonement, for this to mean that the Israelite community was going and giving a goat to a demon out in the wilderness? Or does it mean that this goat was literally a goat to take away the sins? It was an atonement. All the sins were put on this goat, and then it was sent out into the wilderness. if you look at context, and the simplest definition is a scapegoat. It is the way we use a scapegoat, someone to take blame. This word only exists 4 times in our Bible. All 4 of them are right here in Leviticus chapter 16. This is why there's a lot of contention and debate, because we don't have a whole lot of references to add additional insight into what the meaning of this word is. But for me, it's a pretty simple explanation is that this is a scapegoat, and it means exactly what we use the term today to mean. Is a scapegoat is someone to take blame, and that's the idea. So now for application, I have a few more things to wrap up as we look at Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, in the day of Moses, and then for us today. But as far as application, as we look at the scapegoat, Isaiah 53, 5-6. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. So Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, is our scapegoat. So he was tortured, he was afflicted, he was sinless, and he was the atonement for us. But one of the important things to know is that he, like the scapegoat mentioned here, took on our sin. He took on our punishment and our guilt and our sin and bore that on the cross as atonement for us, dying in our place, but also with that taking, in the same way that the scapegoat did, taking the sins so that we didn't have to be left with the repercussions of that, not having to make penalty ourselves, paid in full, tetelestai. Your balance, your debt has been paid in full. Hebrews 10:10. We have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. The Levitical system, the sacrificial system, it's all a foundation that all points to fulfillment in Jesus Christ. So now let's look at Yom Kippur.
This has been a production of Iron Sheep Ministries.